Morai v'Rabotai, Bruchim Habayim. We're continuing on Masechet Succah, and we're on Daf Yud Zayin, Amud Aleph, about 8 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned as a Zchut Rufa'ah Shelema for Esther Bracha Bat Chaya, for Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, and for Nisim Ben Miriam. They should all have full recovery, Rufa'ah Shelema, Bezat Hashem, Amen. This week's learning of the community has been dedicated by Shea family, Dayan family, Kohen family. Should be an ultimate zchut for all their mishpachot, Bezat Hashem, Amen. We are amidst a discussion back and forth between Rabbah and the students of the yeshiva of Rav. Now, the story happened when Rabbah said, this is Rabbah saying over in the Gemara his conversation with the Talmidim of Rav's yeshiva. He says, I were there in the yeshiva, and they were discussing Schach Pasul. And they mentioned that when you have a Schach Pasul, which is items that are not kasher for sichuch, like metal scraps, then you have a psul with 4 tfachim. Less than 4 tfachim, you're good to go. 4 tfachim Schach Pasul, Pasul. And when you have avir, if you have open area across the entire length of sukkah, then that's avir is more chamur, right? And therefore, even with mere 3 tfachim of avir, the whole sukkah is invalid, is pasul. So in our Gemara, in our Girsa, Rabbah holds that 4 tfachim, it's not pasul at all. Even in the middle of the sukkah is not pasul. You need to have 4 amot for it to become pasul. That's the shita of Rabbah. And they go back and forth. And the last discussion that we learned was Rabbah basically set them up for a failure. Rabbah says, well, wait, let me ask you a simple question. You agree that schach pasul is less severe than open air, because schach pasul you need 4 tfachim, according to you, and air, avir, you only need 3 tfachim. It's more chamur. With a little bit already invalidates the entire sukkah. Fine, so let me give you a scenario, says Rabbah. You have less than 4 tfachim of schach pasul. And right adjacent to that, you have less than 3 tfachim of avir. So you almost have 7 tfachim that is, the schach is not valid. Either because it's schach pasul or it's no schach. Kasher or pasul? Kasher. Now, says Rabbah, I take some more schach pasul, some metal scraps, and fill in a little bit of the gap of avir. Now, if avir, which is more chamur, is still kasher, schach pasul, which is less chamur, should still be kasher, right? No, you agree that it's pasul, right? So you see over here, says Rabbah, that doesn't make sense. They tell him, well, Chacham, we could do the same thing to you. Imagine instead of 4 tfachim, you have 4 amot of schach pasul, because that's what Rabbah holds, right? Rabbah holds up until 4 amot still is good, even in the middle. We're not talking about dofan akuma, right? Everyone agrees with dofan akuma that if you have the 4 amot of schach pasul on the side next to the wall, we assume the wall curves, and that's kasher. We're talking about smack in the middle of sukkah. So they tell me, this is Rabbah saying over, so they told me, Chacham, if you have 4 amot, little less, 4 amot minus, of schach pasul, and then next to it, adjacent, you have 3 tfachim of avir, kasher or pasul, well, according to Rabbah, that's kasher. Now, you take a little more schach pasul, and you sprinkle there in the avir, still according to you is going to be pasul. So, what question are you exactly asking? That's where we left. Which really, this was a setup from Rabbah to bring out his point, which he's going to say right at this moment. So says, Rabbah, if you take a look 8 lines up, Ve'amru li, they told me, if so, even according to you, Rabbah, it should be a problem. You hold that schach pasul, you need 4 amot of schach pasul for it to be invalid. So says the Gemara, Ma ilu ikaschach pasul pachot midalit. If you had less than 4 amot of schach pasul, ve'avir pachot mishlosha, and adjacent to it you have less than 3 tfachim of air, what's the halacha? Kashera. So still good, because you have less than 4 amot of schach pasul, less than 3 tfachim of avir, so everything is check, it's good. Now you take some metal beams, some shpudin, some schach pasul, and you drop in this empty area, what would be the halacha? You agree, that's psula. So I ask you the same question. Lo yehe avir aposel b'shlosha schach pasul aposel be'arba? Right, be'arba amot. You have the same exact problem, Rabbah. Because the logic doesn't work. And that you have something, the avir, which is much more chamur. According to Rabbah, avir is 10 times more chamur. Right? Because schach pasul is arba amot you have. Avir is only 3 tfachim. Right? So according to you, for sure it doesn't make sense. So says the Gemara, this is the punchline of his argument. It says he was setting them up for this. He says, no, you don't get it. There's a fundamental difference between what I am saying and what you are saying. Says Rabbah to the Talmidim of the Rav's yeshiva. Remember, this is, according to this nuskha, they said, we heard this from not only Rav, this is the Bet Midrash of Rav he has stepped in. He said, we even heard this from Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel, the Amrit Harvayu, they both say this. Now, this is very important to note, because just in a few minutes, we'll have a second language to this, which would become very essential to know the names. So here, in the first language of the Gemara, is Rav and Shmuel, and his entire Bet Midrash, versus Rabbah. Rabbah is debating them, right? And Rabbah says, I told them, this is the final punchline, no. You are not getting it. Ana, hi my, bishlama dedidi, da'amina arba amot. According to me, it makes sense. I say the shiur is arba amot. Where do I get shiur of arba amot? Where do I get shiur of arba amot? Just like we had before in the Gemara. Shiurin chatzitzin umechitzin, halacha leMoshe miSinai. It's a halacha Moshe miSinai for me. It's mishum shiura. That is the shiur that the Torah has given. That up until 4 amot of schach pasul doesn't make a difference if it's on the side next to the wall because of dofana kuma, or is it in the middle of the sukkah, smack in the middle. For schach pasul, the shiur is 4 amot. That's the shiur. Now, therefore, it makes a lot of sense. I love shiurahu, kevan de lo shavu shiuraihu. The reason that if you have less than 4 amot of schach pasul next to less than 3 tfachim of air and still is kasher, even though that the subtotal is more than 4 amot, is because there are different shiurim. And you can't mix and match or add the shiurim together. This is its own measurement, this is its own measurement. You can't mix them together and say, well, if this is kasher, if almost 4 amot and 3 tfachim is kasher, then if I take some more schach pasul and put it in the avir, should still be kasher. You can't even say that. Because this is its own shiur, 4 amot, halacha Moshe miSinai. The moment it hits 4 amot, it's pasul. It's a shiur. But according to you, says Rabbah, and listen well, here is the key. According to you, there's no shiur, there's nowhere in the Torah that says 4 tfachim. No such a thing. Doesn't exist. The reason that this is pasul is because you have a gap. The gap of 7 tfachim, if it's kasher, however I fill this gap, it still should be kasher. Because there's no point in time where the Torah has said 4 tfachim, quote unquote, as a shiur. The reason 4 tfachim is a problem is because 4 tfachim is an important space. You remember that? When we were discussing the Gezerah of Tikra, right? What was the source of 4 tfachim? There was a machloket. Remember, 3 tvachim, more than lavud, not more than. The whole reason, all of them, is because this is an important area. There's no area important less than 4 tvachim. That's what it was. So the only reason that's pasul is because it's important enough of a gap which you don't have a kosher schach on. That's all. So it says, Rabbi, do you think that this is the same thing as I am saying to you, halakha Moshe Misinai? It says, if you have 4 amot of schach pasul, it's pasul. Less than that, it's kasher. And the halakha Moshe Misinai also says, if you have 3 tfachim of avir, up to 3 tfachim is okay. So you could put them next to each other and check, it's good. Because even though that you have more than 4 amot, you have 4 amot and 2 tfachim plus, still will be fine, because this combination of 2 different shiurim. But according to what you're saying, it makes absolutely no sense, because the 4 tfachim is because it's an important space. It's not halakha Moshe Misinai. It's just a large enough of a space. So if it's large enough of a space, how in the world can you put it next to 3 tfachim of avir and it still be okay? You hear, it's a bomb kasha he's asking them. And that's where he leaves it, basically. He says, shiurim of the Torah you cannot mix and match. If there is a shiur of 4 amot, and there is a shiur of 3 tfachim, this is from the Torah, and this is from the Torah, you could have them coexist next to each other, and still your sukkah is kasher. If I have less than 4 amot of schach pasul, less than 3 tfachim of avir, even though that subtotal is big, who cares? The Torah has given directives, exact directives of what I could do, and I'm using all of them. Right? But if you tell me 4 tfachim is only, we said it. It's not a shiur halakha Moshe Misinai. We said it, and the only reason we said it is because it's big enough of a space. So you should not be able to add to that with an avir and have an almost 7 tfachim space over there, because you can't mix and match. Now, this is an extremely powerful question, but it needs one element. What's the element that it needs? That in the Torah you cannot mix the shiurim together, right? That each one has its own shiur. Therefore, I could put a little bit less than 4 amot of schach pasul adjacent to less than 3 tfachim, and the shiur doesn't add up together. This has its own shiur, this has its own shiur. Therefore, I could end up with a massive gap of 4 amot and 2 tfachim plus, and still my sukkah is kasher, right? Because you don't add up the shiurim together. Well, says, really? You don't add up? Let's see. So I'm just going to read the 3 more lines that we spoke to Rash Bal Peh outside. Says the Gemara, Ledidi lo mistarfi. According to me, they're not mistaref, because both of them halakha Moshe Misinai, they're shiurim that are given to us by Moshe, so we could put them next to each other. According to you, the whole 4 tfachim that you're saying, the amritu shiur mishum haflaga, the shiur is just because you have big enough of a gap that is not kasher. So mali itpalig b'sechach pasul, mali itpalig b'sechach pasul va'avir. Who cares if the whole 7 tfachim is schach pasul, or it's a mixture of schach pasul plus avir, plus some open air. So Amar le Abaye, so Abaye, this is Rabbah, right? Who is the opponent of Rabbah a lot of times in Gemara is Abaye, right? Abaye is a student of Rabbah, right? You have Rabbah and Rabbi Yosef, and then you have Abaye and Rava. Abaye was a yatom. His father passed away when his mother was expecting. His mother passed away at birth. So it was complete yatom. Actually, the name Abaye stands for Asher Becha Yerucham Yatom. It's the Rashi Tevot of Abaye. And he was raised, adopted by Rabbah, right? That's why Rabbah would call him after his father's name, Nachmani. It says, Rav Bar Nachmani, so we call him Nachmani after his father. But nevertheless, Abaye and Rabbah have many back and forths in the Gemara. Abaye was a very sharp individual. So Abaye asks Rabbah, says, wait a second, Ulemar Nami, that's what he calls him Mar, right? My master, right? Ulemar Nami, Nehi de lo shavu shiuraihu besukkah gedolam. But besukkah ktana mi lo shavu shiuraihu, says, I have a bomb kasha on you, my Rebbe, Rabbah, because you are telling me that the shiur Halacha Moshe Misinai is very different, and therefore you cannot combine them together. They could coexist. You could have up to 4 amot of Schach Pasul next to up to 3 tfachim of Avir, and it's still discussion. So it says, wait a second, but there is one scenario in which the shiur is identical, and that is by a Sukkah Ketana. You remember we have discussed numerous times about the shiur of Sukkah Ketana is Machloket Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai. If it's 6 tfachim by 6 tfachim, the minimum, the most minimalistic shiur of Sukkah, how big is it? Also Bet Shammai says it's 7 by 7, that's what we're asking, right? So in a Sukkah Ketana, this is really something that we're going to be discussing in the next daf of the Gemara, but we'll just jump the gun for a moment with a very simple explanation. In a Sukkah Ketana, the shiur of Schach Pasul or Avir is 3 tfachim. You hit 3 tfachim of Schach Pasul, the entire Sukkah is invalid. You hit 3 tfachim of air, the whole thing is invalid. So they share the same shiur when it comes to Sukkah Ketana, small Sukkah. So says Abaye to Rabbah, correct that you hold that the shiur is 4 amot of Schach Pasul in a regular Sukkah. But you agree with the Sukkah Ketana, that's 3 tfachim. So they have the same shiur here. This that you say you can't mix and match shiurim, they have the same shiur in the Sukkah Ketana. So you should be able to mix and match, because I found one area of halacha that they share the same exact shiur for being pasul. Right? So if I find that they have something in common, these 2 shiurim, it should tell me that they are identical in some way, and you should not be able to combine next to each other Avir and Schach Pasul in that way. That's the question of Abaye. A good question. Rabbah's answer is magnificent. You know what Rabbah is going to say? I was going to say, no, you're missing something completely. The Schach Pasul, the shiur of Schach Pasul is always 4 amot. But a Sukkah Ketana is not 4 amot, it's 7 tfachim. The whole thing is 7 tfachim. So therefore, the reason that 3 tfachim of Schach Pasul already invalidates the Sukkah is not because of Schach Pasul, but it's because you don't have enough Schach Kasher. In order for your Sukkah to be a minimum amount of Sukkah that's Kasher, you have to have 7 by 7 tfachim of area and Schach. So up to 3 tfachim of Avir or Schach Pasul is, help me out? Lavud. Lavud means what? We assume it's completely closed. It's like it's not there, right? It's minute. It's as if it's covered with Schach Kasher, the whole thing, right? So therefore, I have it. Once it hits 3 tfachim, that's no longer lavud. You don't have enough Schach Kasher. You have less than 4 tfachim of Schach Kasher, and that you cannot do. So it's not the reason because it's considered Schach Pasul, the psul of Schach Pasul. It's because it's a psul of not having enough Schach Kasher. You missed the boat, Abaye. That's what Allah says. So it's not that they share the same level of psul. No. The reason is you have to have enough Schach Kasher. And once it hits 3, which is not lavud anymore, now you have less than 4 tfachim of Schach Kasher in a small sukkah. So therefore it's pasul. Not because you have enough Schach Pasul. Schach Pasul is always Halacha Moshe Sinai 4 amot. Right? So Rabbah sticks to his guns and he explains every single question so far. Now again, we're going to read through what we explained. Baal Peh says the Gemara. Amale, Rabbi answers Abaye, you missed the boat. Hatam lav mishum deshavu shiuraihu. It's not because they share the same shiur of psul of 3 tfachim. No. Ela mishum deleteh leshiura de sukkah. It's because you don't have shiur of sukkah. You need 7 tfachim. If you have 3 tfachim of schach pasul, you have less than 4 tfachim left of schach kasher, and that is not feasible. V'chol says the Gemara. Now the Gemara is going to go.
So you can't have 4. If you have 4 tefachim in the middle and 2.5 on each side. Well, no. If you have 1.5 on each side.
Yeah. So yeah.
Wouldn't that be kosher?
Well, that's lavud from all sides.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Mali lavud like this or lavud like that.
Minimum you need.
When it's lavud, it's lavud.
Right, but when the minimum you need in the middle is 4 tefachim, you need at least 4 tefachim.
Not necessarily. We'll get to that. Okay. So says the Gemara. Now the Gemara is going to go on a journey to Masechet Kelim again to see, because we just Rabbah just dropped a concept. It says when you have things that have different shiurim, halacha Moshe Sinai, you can't combine those two together because they're different shiurim. He says, really? Any place that the shiurim are not the same, lo mistarfi, they are not mistaref. Vehatenan, didn't we learn? Habeged shlosha al shlosha. This is again a Mishnah in Masechet Kelim. What is the shiur of tum'at midras? When a zav, zava, nida, certain high-level tumas, they have a tum'at midras. That even if you don't touch them, you just sleep on them without touching them, they become tameh, right? So that's a high level of tumah. This is in Perek Chav Zayin of Masechet Kelim. So it says there, habeged shlosha al shlosha. The minimum shiur of tum'at midras will be 3 tfachim by 3 tfachim if it's a garment, if it's a regular garment. But hasak, that is a garment in halachot tumah v'tahara. A garment is either made out of semer rechelim, it's made out of wool, or out of pishtar, out of linen, right? Hasak, if it's a cloth that's made out of, sak is made out of hair, not out of regular shtiva erev. It's hair of either goats or other animals. That's sak, right? So sak is more thick and it's more rough. So in order to be able to work with it, you need a bigger shear. So that the shear is arba'a al arba, 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim, right? Regular beged is 3 by 3. This is 4 by 4. If it's leather, that's even more tough and thick. There will be chamisha al chamisha. The minimum shear you need is 5 by 5. And if you have mapas, if you have a mat that's more rough, then you need shisha al shisha, 6 by 6 tefachim. Those are the shiurim that the Mishnah gives. Vetani, we learned on this Mishnah, habeged v'hasak, hasak v'haor, haor v'hamapas. All of these things, mistarefin zeim ze. They could be combined. That means if you have 2 tefachim of beged and 1 tefach of sak, together are sewed up, whatever it is, and it's 3 tefachim by 3 tefachim, it's mekabel tum'at midras. They are combined. They have different shiurim. This is 3 by 3, this is 4 by 4, normally. But we learned that you could combine them. So you have 2 tefachim of beged with 1 tefachim of sak, combined together, it is mekabel tum'at midras. So you see, you could combine them together.
Because of the beged or because of the...
Because beged, right? And so would be with doing the 4 by 4 with the 5 by 5, or the 5 by each one with the one above it. They go together. So says the Gemara. Wait 1 second. Hatam kedekatani. The Gemara answers, says, no, that's different, because there, all of those 4 items they share one level of tum'ah together. Amar Rabbi Shimon, Mata'am. Why is it that you could combine these levels of tum'ah together? Because ho'il ve'ra'ui litame moshav, because all of them are fit to accept tum'at moshav, not tum'at midras. There are three different levels. There is tum'at midras, tum'at moshav, and tum'at mishkav. Right? So moshav is whatever you sit on. Right? So for tum'at moshav, they could share a shear. Why? Says the Gemara, Keditnan, as we learn in a different Mishnah, HaMekatseya mikulan tefach al tefach tameh. Any of these four, whether it is beged, or if it is sak, or if all of these four that we mentioned, you have one tefach and one tefach of it, and you patch it up, it's going to be tameh, which means what? If you cut of one tefach and one tefach, it could become tum'at moshav. Why? Lemay chazi, Gemara says, what is it good for? Usually you need 3, 4, 5 tefachim, 6 tefachim, and 6 tefachim to be usable. So what's one tefach and one tefach? What is that good for? Says the Gemara, is good for a patch. You could make a patch out of it. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Lakish says, in the name of Rabbi Yanai, Ho'il v'ra'ui litelo al gabei hamor, because you could make a patch on the saddle of a donkey. Right? You have a hole there, you make a little patch there, you sew it up. So the one tefach and one tefach is good. Right? And therefore it's going to be tum'at moshe. Now, all of these four items share the same shear. If they're on their own and you're not making a patch, beged has to be 3 by 3, sak has to be 4 by 4, right? 5 by 5, 6 by 6. But when it comes to making a patch out of them, all four of them, the shear is one tefach by one tefach, and therefore you could mix and match their shiurim together, because even one tefach of them is important. So if you, what's the difference? If I patch one tefach and one tefach of this, two tefachim by 2 tefachim of a regular beged, it's going to be mistaref, it's going to be added up together to a shiur of 3 by 3. Fine. So this was, Rabotai, the first lashon of the Gemara. So remember, a few minutes ago, we said remember the names. So let's review this, because we're at the end of our time. Review this, and tomorrow it will be much easier, much more of a flow, because we're already very much comfortable with the concepts. It's just going to be different names, basically. Here we have a discussion between Rabbah and the students of Rav. Students of Rav say, we heard from Rav and Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel dam tarayos. According to this lashon, this language in the Gemara, there's Rav and Shmuel that both agree that the shiur of schach pasul in the middle of Sukkah is how much? 4 tfachim. Rabbah is the one that's disagreeing. So we have the first generation of Amoraim all in agreement, and Rabbah, which is a much later one, disagreeing with that. Now, tomorrow we will have 2 changes into this. First of all, Rav and Shmuel in the second language, the way it was said, in the time of the Gemara, we had 2 main yeshivot. There was the Surah and Pumbedita, right? So in Surah and Pumbedita, this was said differently. This is one way that we learned that Rav and Shmuel actually agree with each other. There's no disagreement there. Later on, Rabbah is the one that disagrees. Tomorrow we'll see that in the other yeshiva, they learned that this actually is machloket Rav and Shmuel. Shmuel is the one that says 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim. Rav is the one that disagrees and holds 4 amot by 4 amot. It was 4, not 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim. 4 tfachim across the whole sukkah. That's the psul of schach. And Rav is the one that holds it's 4 amot, up to 4 amot, even in the middle of the sukkah, regardless of dofar akuma, still is something that is doable, which Be'ezrat Hashem will continue and we'll learn together in the days to come. Hazak u'baruch.